Yo ho, all together, hoist the colors high.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we would never offer betting advice on a big sports ball game, but we are willing to say that in any contest between indigenous noble savages and white bastard settler colonizers, our money is on smallpox. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the work week ending 9 February 2024. Dateline New York, Monday, 5 February. New York Magazine has a theory for why Taylor Swift has won more Album of the Year Grammys than all black female artists combined. And stop me if you've heard this before, but it begins with an R and it ends with acism. I know, it's a lot to take in, but we'll get through this together. The New York Magazine headline read, quote, "Not giving a black woman the Album of the Year? Again? Snooze." The author of the piece, a male-to-female transgender book critic by the name of Andrea Long Chu. Now, we don't make the news, ladies and gentlemen. We just report it. Now, in addition to enriching the human condition with hard-hitting, thought-provoking missives on why giving an award to a white girl is bad because you didn't give it to a black girl, and that's racist, Ms. Long Chu, the artist formerly known as Mr. Long Chu, I don't know, I got nothing, also won last year's Pulitzer Prize for criticism for his combined corpus of writings, including long, tortured explanations of how the highest expression of feminism is a dude sticking a tampon up his ass, and his gripping first-person narrative about how being addicted to internet porn made him want to become a woman. No, I am not making any of this up. How badly I wish I was. Dateline Stockholm, Tuesday, 6 February. 3 explosions rocked the Swedish capital in a 4-day period this week, in another touching reminder, as if the Swedes needed one, that mass migration brings nothing but cultural enrichment, and diversity is our strength. After several months of relative calm in the violent, lawless, no-go areas that Swedes used to know as quiet, pleasant neighborhoods in their quiet, pleasant capital city, the Stockholm gang wars exploded back to life this week, no pun intended. And what sorts of people are in these violent street gangs that settle their differences with improvised explosives? Well, we're not allowed to talk about that, really. because we wouldn't want to perpetuate negative stereotypes. So, who knows, it could just be nice blonde Swedish boys who enjoy capping motherfuckers with pipe bombs after hockey practice. There's no way of knowing for sure. Now, the cops say they are quite baffled, and also, please don't kill us. And for those of you who thought Stockholm was hogging all of the cultural enrichment for itself, a further 2 bombings were reported in the northern city of Gavleborg earlier in the week. Police say residents should be on the lookout for a man of nondescript height, weight, and appearance who may or may not be from an immigration background. Also, please don't hurt us or call us racist. End quote. Dateline, Carson City, Wednesday, 7 February. Former South Carolina governor, UN ambassador, and current delusional windmill tilting presidential candidate Nikki Quixote had a fun night on Tuesday when, despite being the only actual candidate running in the Nevada Republican caucuses, not only did she fail to win, but she got doubled up, and then some, by a candidate named none of the above. Like I say, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes you write the jokes, sometimes the jokes write themselves. And believe you me, when the final tally is nobody 63%, Nikki Haley 30%, the jokes are most decidedly writing themselves. Speaking of which, I'm suddenly reminded of that claim Nikki made a few weeks ago when she said she was kicked out of a beauty pageant because you had to either be a black girl or a white girl, and she weren't neither one. Now, just a strong brown girl of color trying to make her way in the universe. Anyway, as I stated here on this very segment back in episode number something or other, this sounded to me at the time like a very strange, rather highly implausible claim, and I hope somebody fact checks it. Like what? In South Carolina in 1988, nobody had ever seen a freaking Asian girl before? Well, gosh, this list here says y'all have to be black or white, and we ain't got no third column. I guess y'all brown girls are just fucked, ain't ya? Now, this seems like something we might have heard about before the year 2024 is all I'm saying. Seems like there would be lots of other aggrieved, aspiring Asian beauty pageant candidates who got screwed in similar fashion. So this reporter continues to look eagerly forward to that claim being fact-checked good and long and hard and deep. Dateline! Oh, come on, you know what the Dateline is. Gosh, I wonder what news story Cap's going to talk about that happened on Thursday this week. You think he'll talk about the single most disastrously shambolic live primetime presidential press conference in all of American history? The one that was like watching the Hindenburg collide with the Titanic over Hiroshima while Chernobyl watched and touched itself? And folks, you know it's bad when they're shoving Joe Biden out there to take non-pre-screened questions from the press at 7:45 in the evening on a Thursday, when all he wants to do is maybe play a game of chess with Fred from down the hall and then watch a little bit of Wheel of Fortune and then drift off to sleep while reading a National Geographic. And why don't they ever do these kinds of things? Because, well, they might go exactly like this thing went. And even though they had every reason to think it would go as badly as it went, they felt like they had to do it, which is understandable because, let's face it, it's not every day a special counsel issues a final report in which he concludes that, yeah, the president is totally guilty of the criminal conduct that's being alleged, but I'm not going to file charges because he is so mentally enfeebled that he probably wouldn't be judged competent to stand trial. And then the White House says, uh-oh, time to wake some makeup juice, Johnny. Make some wake-up juice, I mean. Don't get me wrong, he held it together pretty good for the first few minutes while he was riding the wave of whatever drug cocktail it is they pump him full of when they need about 10 minutes of convincing semi-lucidity. But let's say the wave crested pretty fast and 15 minutes hadn't gone by before the president was delivering a sobering reminder that denial ain't just a river in Mexico. Dateline Dublin, Friday, 9 February. The Irish national women's basketball team made headlines this week. There's a sentence you never heard before. When they refused to shake hands with the Israeli team prior to their Thursday qualifying match in something called Eurobasket 2025, which presumably is some sort of women's basketball tournament. In the highly mistaken belief that anybody gives a damn, the Ireland team issued a statement explaining their actions, which reads, quote, Basketball Ireland informed FIBA Europe yesterday that as a direct result of recent comments made by Israeli players and coaching staff, including inflammatory and wholly inaccurate accusations of anti-Semitism published on official Israeli Federation channels, that our players will not be partaking in traditional pre-match arrangements with our upcoming opponents. End quote. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I can't say with any degree of certitude what actually happened here, and I don't want to imply that I could ever care. But you know what this sounds like to me? It sounds a little bit like the Ireland players were posting a bunch of anti-Israel crap on social media, as young people often do, and the Israeli players said, "Hey, shut up, you anti-Semitic bitch!" And then the Ireland players said, "We won't shake your hand, and it's all your own damn fault." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the week that culminates with the big sports ball game that we're all not watching. And with that, I pass the controls to my illustrious co-host, the lovely and talented, the one and only, your friend and mine. Put your grateful hands together and make a joyful noise for the Reverend Dr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been brought here today to discuss specifically, because you got to say it wrong or it don't count, specifically one individual interview. I have a few different angles. I have a few different perspectives, but primarily we're going to be talking to Captain Curmudgeon because he's the other person in this show, and that's how these things work, right?
Preach it, Reverend Doctor!
Reverend Dr. Mr. Squatch. There we go.
Yes, I made you a reverend and a doctor. You had no idea that was coming, did you?
I had, well, you know, I might have heard something coming, but I didn't know it was you. It was a little bit sour. I apologize. I kind of tasted it when it came out. It wasn't as tasty as I thought it might be. So where do you want to start with this? Are we just going to jump into the interview? Can we do a preface, so to speak?
Oh, do we want to do a preface? I mean, as I think most of our audience are probably aware, Tucker Carlson went to Moscow this week and did an interview with Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin, which you're not supposed to do because journalists doing journalism is bad. It's very, very bad. You can't go interview a world leader because, let's face it, we can't run the risk of having any unauthorized narratives potentially escape into the wild or potentially have the Russian president tell us that there might have been things our country did to precipitate the present conflict, but that's neither here nor there. So anyway, the interview happened, and we're going to talk about the interview.
Magnificent. I went and dug up, actually, we ran into each other on the same street corner earlier right before the show and realized we both subscribed to the same channel, which is Body Language Ghost. When she does a breakdown on an interview, I pretty much take that thing to the bank. This is the only person I've ever seen who sees interactions the way I do.
One of the best channels on YouTube, for my money.
There's not another channel quite like it. There are other channels who purport to do the same thing.
There is not a channel that does what she does as well as she does it.
Right. It's if I had not come across the methodology of body language reading previous to her, I might have thought she invented it. But the fact of the matter is, this is a technique that's been available for 20 or 30 years now. They've been owning it over the past 10 years pretty much by using visible cues from social media sources that allow you to kind of check back a few years later and see what was real and what wasn't and how much of it, you know what I'm saying? The deceptive quality has been refined.
And I think of myself as a person, and I know you do too, who has sort of a pretty good intuitive understanding of body language cues and whatnot, but this girl takes it to a level that is just completely beyond my comprehension and just wonderfully insightful and useful.
When I first stumbled across her channel, I was so stunned. It was I think she was going over maybe one of the Bundy tapes or something. And it was one of them that for whatever reason, maybe I can't remember what it was. Can't remember what the first one was. But I remember looking at it and going, she is saying exactly what I'm thinking. How's that possible?
Yeah.
But it's possible because she is accurately interpreting body language in situ, so to speak.
Yeah, like for you, the observer, you're thinking that thing that person did just gave me a funny feeling, but I'm not exactly sure why, and she can tell you exactly what the why is.
Right. Yeah. Like the micro expression in conjunction with the hand movement that wasn't quite the way it should have been, if he was being honest, that kind of thing. Little things. The man, look at that mega Chad, dude. You see that, dude? I put a poll in my chat, if anybody's interested, whether or not you trust Tucker Carlson. I have it covered up so that we can't see the results until we get to like the 1 hour mark, and then we'll check out the results on that poll. So just to kind of lay the groundwork here, Tucker Carlson shows up, he does a sound bite, and then he goes in and meets Putin. Putin is already in the room when he enters, which I think might say an awful lot as a power play, but everyone else I've talked to thinks that he was just being an asshole. Same thing in my book. Then you've got Tucker comes in, sits down. They have a kind of a rapid back and forth that has to do with the way Putin wants to do the interview. He asked Tucker, are we going to have a serious conversation, or are we putting on a show? Tucker says, we're going to have a serious conversation. Putin says, fine.
Yes.
Then I feel like I must
Putin also does another thing, which is classic old KGB man. He says, if I'm not mistaken, your training is in history, correct? So he wants his opposite number to know that I know everything about you. I have studied you. So let's be under no illusions about that.
Right. I know what you had for breakfast this morning and how many times was on your lapel before your chick whisked them away.
It's exactly the way that a Russian former intelligence operative would try to backfoot his opposite number. It was just great.
There's a lot of little stuff that are directly out of like Cold War doctrine for non-information exchange of speaking. You know, he says a lot without saying much in some cases, and it's impressive.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna let Body Language Ghost take this from the top, and we'll pause as we see fit on the way through. And by the way, anybody in chat has anything interesting or knowledgeable to drop in this tidbit, let me know.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be pulling through chat talking to everybody till the end of the show. That's going to be our talk out. I think we're going to try to work with that. I don't know. We'll see. Let her roll.
Tucker sat down with Putin. We haven't seen Putin in so long. I will say at the very beginning of this, and we are not going to get into it because I do not want to plant the seeds in your head of conspiracy. But
look at that man's face. Let me make it better. Does he not look terrified? He might be fixing to sit down with the most dangerous man on earth. There is a decent chance.
I certainly would be feeling more than a little bit of trepidation if I was in his shoes. I don't think anybody wouldn't.
I might have even had a little palpitation. Woo. Let's just not think about the things that this man might have been involved with.
But it's good that he went and did this, even in spite of that trepidation, and that's what journalism looks like.
This is what journalism looks like. And if it doesn't look like this, it is dirty, it is underhanded, it is inside, behind lines. It's
a scripted entertainment product.
Not journalism. Journalism is not a scripted entertainment product. That is what news. That's what CNN sells you. That's not journalism. That is advertising. That is a different genre entirely.
Husband, rightfully so, says Putin did a very, very good job last night of announcing to the world leaders that you can trust me. Now, with that being said, let's move on to some other things.
My question was a little more specific. It was, of course, not a defense of Nazis, neo or otherwise. It was a practical question. You don't control the entire country. You don't control Kiev. You don't seem like you want to. So how do you eliminate a culture or an ideology?
Putin has been clearing his throat a lot through this interview. He is older. I suspect some form of disease, whether it be temporary or chronic. I don't know.
All right. So Tucker comes in strong. He comes in hot. He immediately sits down, starts to take kind of a control of this interview by introducing this segment as, okay, let's get your honest opinion on exactly what it is you think is going on over here, Mr. Putin. Let's do this thing, right? He still looks terrified.
But I will tell you the thing I like about the way he conducts this interview that we never see from the news business in the age of fake news. Nearly anybody else in that business who was going into this interview, they would be approaching it the way all interviews are approached. Now, they want to get very adversarial right off the bat, and they want to create some 5 to 6 to 10 second little chunk of video that will go viral on social media. And that's going to be the only purpose of the exercise. Tucker, on the other hand, goes in there actually wanting to figure out what makes this man tick, and to have him say things that might be valuable or insightful to an American TV audience. And I think it's the right approach, and he does a pretty good job of maintaining it throughout.
I agree. He doesn't come in with the impression that this is my interview with Vladimir Putin. I am doing this, and I am the star.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's here to see you. They're here to see the other guy who we never hear from.
Right. This dude who sits on top of his castle made of gold and never even acknowledges
the guy who's fighting a war where we're the ones bankrolling the other side.
Yeah. So let's see where it goes, or where she takes it, because neither of us have actually seen this. This came out like earlier today or yesterday afternoon.
Yep. We've both seen the interview itself, but not the body language ghost video.
Right. And I was going through thinking body language ghost things the whole time. Like there's a few points when Putin he seems to get nervous, but it comes across as a very low level jive, right? His fingers start moving around, his hands move a little more than they're supposed to, and then he grabs both arms of the chair and gets a grip on it, and it doesn't happen again for like 20 minutes. That man has an ironclad constitution.
And you bring up a good point, because I often find myself doing the same thing when I watch interviews now. Like, I wonder what body language ghost would think about that thing that just happened.
But we'll have to, when we see his body language, kind of chalk up that constant clearing, throat swallowing, things of that nature to that disease, other than, some telltale sign of body language.
Or feelings, or a view of history in a country that you don't control. What do you do about that?
А вы знаете, как по мне покажется странным, в ходе переговоров в Стамбуле.
So as he begins this talk, Putin, brain search, believe me, look, shoulder shrug, kind of all going together. He's a little stiff. I wouldn't say he's completely relaxed in this interview. He does become very relaxed later.
As strange as it may seem to you, during the negotiations in Istanbul, we did agree that we have it all in writing. Neo-Nazism would not be cultivated in Europe.
And then you see the furrow in the face come down and those eyebrows squish down. And then they release as whatever word comes out of his mouth at that point, as like, aha, one eyebrow first, and then the other one follows slowly. That's his quote unquote trump card. We've already got all this information. I've got signed documents. That's exactly what that means.
I have detailed files.
Yeah. And he breaks out the detailed files and hands them to him. This is from our archives. You can trust them.
Yep, and that's another total power move. Just like sitting down and telling the other guy about his background.
Very, very subtly, I might add.
Yep.
It's like asking the guy in prison what he had for breakfast, or like how he liked his breakfast while naming the parts. It's like, what? Why do you know this? But he will know.
He says, I've got backing to my words. Believe me. And then the tell of, I have backing.
Ukraine, including that it would be prohibited at the legislative level. Mr. Carson, we agreed on that. This, it turns out, can be done during the negotiation process.
Здесь нет
And there's
ничего
nothing
унизительного.
humiliating for Ukraine as a modern civilized state. Is any state allowed to promote Nazism? It is not, is it? That is it.
Ведь нет, правда? Вот и всё.
He leans back in the chair, very confident in his argument to Tucker.
Вот и всё.
Will there be talks, and why haven't there been talks about resolving the conflict in Ukraine? Peace talks.
Они дошли до очень высокой стадии согласования позиций, сложных.
They have been. They reached a very high stage of
Pulls himself in, believe me look, shoulders up.
coordination of positions in a complex.
All right. So are you buying what he's putting down right now, just based on body language alone? Neither of us speak Russian, so
Yes, and as we were talking about backstage before the show, there's a disconnect that you always have to contend with in the fact that while the Russians outwardly appear to be a European people, in the way they express themselves and engage in discourse, they are much closer to East Asians in terms of they often refer to things very obliquely. They use lots of metaphor and
innuendo.
and
Yeah.
he really tries at certain points here to weave a daisy chain of metaphors that's so thick that Tucker starts feeling like, okay, I'm way off into the weeds here, and I need to get myself back on the path.
But
And I think
okay.
I think he does a fairly decent job of interjecting at those times where he needs to, where there certainly is a tendency on Putin's part to want to filibuster his way through this thing to a certain to a certain extent, so that fewer questions can be asked.
But is it a filibuster in this case? I sort of got the impression from him that since he was dealing with an American educated individual, that he would have to lay down some basic Russian facts for him. Let's start at the beginning.
And that's what he
1,000
opens
years.
up by doing in response to the very first question.
Yeah, it takes him 37 minutes to get through the whole thing, and
Yeah, and I don't mind that so much, because nearly all of that is probably information that the average American who's viewing this has no idea
no clue.
about any of it, and it is all pertinent and relevant to how history culminated in the present conflict.
And I'm gonna stand by what I said at the very beginning of this thing when they were like, "Hey, Ukrainians are fighting Russians," and I was like, "Wait a second, aren't there a bunch of Russians in Ukraine? Like, how's that supposed to work? I mean, if it's not the Hungarians, I don't know who's fighting the Russians." I meant it as a joke, but at the same time, it does kind of follow.
Process, but still they were almost finalized. But after we withdrew our troops from Kiev, as I have already said,
And the body is stiff. And you can pretty much tell that because shoulders and neck are moving together and they're not separate on this whole question that there have been, or at least from the interpreter, about negotiations. And there could be a few reasons for this. One, for those of you who have been watching Putin for a very long time, and or me, you know that he's got arthritis, hip region, probably up and through the spine. So it's like, and this is pretty much a normal movement for him. Especially you see it more when he walks. Another thing is we found out, according to Colonel McGregor, I believe his name is, that the Russians put very high value on a leader who can keep its country together. Like you could literally just carpet bomb everything, but as long as everyone follows you, as far as in the leadership, you're fine. So anything that could jeopardize his cabinet from not following him would increase stress.
the other side threw away all these agreements and obeyed the instructions of Western countries.
Now we're seeing a little bit of looseness, I should say. It's not really loose, but again, we've got to go with the arthritis. Neck is kind of independent. The shoulder line does follow it. You know, he's giving you pretty much his truth, and there is some underlying stress there.
European countries and the United States to fight Russia to the bitter end. Moreover, the president of Ukraine has legislated.
All right. So this is a good 20 minutes into the interview. At this point, Tucker has gotten to the point where he's starting to think he's being led down the garden path.
Yeah. little
He,
bit.
he doesn't like the history lesson. He obviously is put off by the approach. And yet, every time he interviews Putin, Putin just smiles and shrugs it off. He's like, do you want to continue or not? Basically, that's not how he puts it, but he gives Tucker the option of we could go to the show or we can continue telling the truth. That's your choice. We can have a real conversation or we can put on the show that you're interested in. Which
And
one do you want?
Tucker has a fine line that he needs to walk here because he needs to do the journalist thing and get him to give answers to straight questions, but he also needs to get as much out of him as possible because there might be something pertinent and useful in one of these filibusters that maybe he didn't want to say in exactly the way he did. So it's a double-edged sword, to be sure.
The ban on negotiating with Russia. He signed a decree forbidding everyone to negotiate with Russia. But how are we
Right.
going to negotiate if he forbade himself and everyone to do this? We know that he is putting forward some ideas about this settlement, but in order to agree on something, we need to have a dialogue. Is that not right?
Well, but you wouldn't be speaking to the Ukrainian president, you'd be speaking to the American president. When was the last time you spoke to Joe Biden?
Okay, so can you imagine having a serious conversation with Joe Biden?
No, I cannot.
I wouldn't discuss anything but what type of ice cream he wanted and whether or not his diapers had been changed.
I believe he's done exactly one sit-down interview in the last 6 months, and it was with some 12-year-old girl from some obscure show on some obscure cable channel who asked him questions mostly about grandkids and ice cream, and it still didn't go all that great.
Granted, yeah, and he's it. I keep making this joke, and it's kind of stupid, but I hear tell one of the animatronic presidents have been taken off of the Disney line over there because they've been using it in the White House. I know.
And there's still 10 months to the election.
What do you reckon about that old 25th Amendment there?
Never happened.
Don't think Kamala's got the cojones? She ain't got the clam slam to do it?
No, and I think everybody else in the cabinet realizes that she's an even worse option than he is, even in his current state.
Well, thing is she isn't completely dilapidated and depleted. She can't be driven around like a little remote control car.
Things, even she's not that much different from him in the sense that if you leave her in front of a live microphone for longer than 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, it's going to get pretty shambolic in a pretty big hurry.
Agreed. You're correct.
I cannot remember when I talked to him. I do not remember. We can look it up.
You don't remember?
We can
No.
look it up.
Why? Do I have
That's actually really good. We go back and forth. What languages does Putin speak? I'm pretty sure he's very bilingual in very many languages. But Tucker obviously laughs at Putin saying this stuff. Putin automatically reacts. You see the smile on his face. It's like, oh, I made a joke. This is very good. It's a little bit of camaraderie, which I think
We
at this
are
point
laughing at funny joke, yes?
interview.
That was really good, dude. I'll point out another thing. He didn't react. Tucker did not react to the translator translating for him. He reacted to Putin speaking in Russian. Did you notice that?
Yes, I did.
After the show, we could take a closer look at it, but I'm almost positive he started laughing right before the translator managed to translate it.
Have you seen that? Have you caught that right hand tick yet that you were looking for?
Watch him right on the other side of that chair. There's that little curly cue down there. The whole time he's talking, if he's not talking with his hands, Putin is running his middle finger around that little curly cue on the outside of his right hand chair. watch that hand. It's almost never actually shown, but you can see his thumb in some of the scenes, and he's like just sitting there doing that number around that little lip. He wants to be anywhere other than here. He's so freaking bored with this place.
Yeah.
To remember everything. I have my own things
Because now the foot goes down, the body kind of drops into the chair. It's like, oh, and he's got a good smile on his face. Oh, yeah. Don't remember. Like, yeah, calling out his BS, but in a very forgiving manner with the laugh helps your camaraderie with the other side.
I tell
have the
funny joke, we both laugh.
Sending the war. So I would think that would be memorable.
Ну да, он финансирует.
Well, yes, he funds, but
It also helps Tucker to be able to ask a more probing, like in your face, well, he is funding the war. Putin doesn't give him eye contact, agrees with him. You see the positive movement in the head, furrowed in, really just avoiding the whole topic. He won't look at Tucker. He's turtled himself in it. He's standing firm and, oh, well.
I talked to him before this.
Essentially, what his body just told me is, I really don't want to have this conversation. Let's move on to the actual real stuff we need to talk about first. You know, like,
Yeah.
I'm aware that my enemies are doing things and I can't control what they do. And you rubbing it in my face is not going to make me want to let you leave my country freely.
The world is in perfect place. What do we do?
And it instantly goes into, I talked to him before, so he can stand on some truth there. And you see the body movement flow with that.
And I said to him then, by the way, I will not go into details, I never do, but I said to him then, I believe that you are making a huge mistake of historic proportions by supporting everything that is happening there in Ukraine by pushing Russia away. I told him repeat.
And now you really see him loosen up as he gets into the story of what he remembers and retelling it. You also see some of that arthritis movement. It's always there. It's not like loosey-goosey. He's certainly not a yoga master.
By the way,
Huh.
I think that would be correct.
Well, I mean, you think about all the things this man has probably been through. Arthritis
Well, yeah,
might be
and Putin does fancy himself a sportsman. He likes to be photographed playing hockey and chopping wood with no shirt on and all that good stuff. You know, because the Russian people still care about things like male virility a lot more than our country still does.
right. Although they have limited the number of mustaches they have recently. You notice that? Not
It's
as many
true. It's true.
mustaches. Yeah.
The mustache quota.
Almost all clean shaven, bearded and mustached used to be kind of
You
a thing
used,
about
you used to
Russia.
see some really magnificent Russian mustaches too.
And not anymore. The big Stalin-esque walrusy looking things look like a
Hell
ferret
yeah.
slapping somebody's face. My man's
Yep.
walking around with a groundhog hanging off his lip. He's
Yep.
proud of it. He's got a whole
There it
beaver
is.
up there. Dude.
Correct if I stop here.
What did he say?
Можно, у него...
Ask him, please. It is easier for you. You are a citizen of the United States. Go and ask him. It is not appropriate for me to comment on our conversation.
But you haven't spoken to him since before February of 2022.
Нет, мы не разговаривали. Но
Нет.
у нас есть...
No, we haven't spoken.
Кстати говоря,
Certain contacts are being maintained, though. Speaking of which,
So here we go. We're back into avoidance. No, we haven't spoken, but certain context. So now we see the tight lipness. We see the I want to look at you, but I'm going to look above you. It's walking that fine line. I do not want to be a liar. I need to watch what I say. So you see a lot of squirreliness, the constant movement, the looking away, looking.
Moose and
Blame-
squirrel have escaped.
Yeah.
She said something about a squirrel. I couldn't help it. What am I supposed to do?
I know, and I got moose right here. I got my own moose in here. So okay, this squirreliness that she's talking about, right? This is, I think, more along the lines of, has he talked to the president? No, I have not talked to the president. However, I may have talked to an interpreter who talked to an interpreter to the
Right.
president. So, no, I didn't talk to the president, but we have communicated, or possibly the administration, and he doesn't make a distinction between it. Is there a distinction?
Is there a distinction? Indeed.
Down, looking up, tightness in the face, tightness in the body, then loosiness in the body as it sits there and tells truth everywhere around where this conversation wants to go. Talking to Biden.
That is the only scenario where the world could be stable, sustainable, and predictable. Until then, while the head is split into two parts, it is an illness, a serious adverse condition. It is a period of severe disease that the world is going through now. But I think that thanks to honest journalism, this work is akin to work of the doctors. This could somehow be remedied.
Well, let's just give one example, the US dollar, which has kind of united the world.
Oh my. So we're talking
Mhm.
about the US dollar. Just give one example, the US dollar, deep breath in and out. And he's not moving. So when I sit there and it's not really a
I kind of see a little bit of a deer in the headlights look here. Not hard, not bad. He's not surprised, but at the same time, he didn't expect to take this turn right now.
Right.
He doesn't know where this question about the US dollar could actually go, and so he's a little
Yeah,
apprehensive.
might not have been expecting it right then. Also, the thumbnail for the video I just dropped in the private chat, my favorite thumbnail I have ever made, ever.
Oh, cool. I went and tried to look at it. I saved it to a playlist in case you want to look at
And
it
it's
later.
and it's relevant to the current topic.
Okay. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
subject change, but it elaborates on the subject as far as I'm going to direct the mind to an example. I would expect the body to sit there and go into that example. It has to redirect to, oh, I'm going to pinpoint on this example. Something moves, but we see nothing. No eyes, no head, no body, no legs, but a deep breath in.
In a lot of ways, maybe not to your advantage, but certainly to ours. Is that going away as the...
And then, of course, the clearing of the throat, which again, the man's been coughing the whole time through this interview and trying to clear his throat. So it's like, oh, maybe, probably not.
reserve currency, the universally accepted currency? How have sanctions, do you think, changed the dollar's place in the world?
And we got touching of the head, we got scratching, deep breath in.
Вы знаете, это одна из грубейших
Also
Little bit of
looking
a
away
difference
where he was
in-
making consistent eye contact before.
Well, now, I think what you just saw was a sign of relief. I think he thought there was going to be a very pointed question here. And what actually happened is sort of what he considers a softball. Tucker might consider it hardball, but he was expecting something much more sensitive. And he's like, okay, well, I'll talk about that. And look at the smile on his face. Look how happy he is to answer this question and not the question he thought was fixing to be asked.
Well, yeah, because he is happy to talk about how the sanctions haven't touched him in any meaningful way. He'll talk about that all freaking day. Are you kidding me?
Right?
You know, to use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy
But as he started that, he's very loose. You see the head bob and then point in multiple directions as the brain engages those spots.
struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the US political leadership.
That man has the best eyebrows in the business. Those things should get extra pay. They need more screen time. Those things are amazing.
They should have a steel cage match against Rachel Zegler's eyebrows.
But no, she'd never make it into the cage. She would just be mysteriously missed and found drunk, shot twice in the back of the head through an obvious freaking suicide.
It's like two Groucho Marx mustaches that live on top of her eyes.
Yeah, you got me. You beat me on that one. 1 point for Cap.
Это основа основ могущества США.
The dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power.
I'm going to assume when he took his hand and held it like he did, up with fingers
Like
clawed
he's
into
clutching someone's testicle.
sending the dollar. It is not an open hand of openness. It is a claw that he holds on to. I hope you understand that he is holding on to. I'm going to go back and see how he ended that claw.
I
in
am
this-
holding your testicles in palm of my hand.
You know, I could see this man with this look on his face currently crushing someone's balls. So that is the information.
Yeah,
I
he
need
was
them-
he was the KGB station chief in East Berlin, so you never know.
Roll him around a little bit and
Yeah.
induce a torsion.
If I squeeze my hand, you would have very bad day. Yes.
Yeah. I've got a better German than my Russian. I need to work on my Russian.
Могущество США.
The dollar is the
He clawed it and then loosened his grip on it and then was like it was handing it back to the US, which is as far as he is concerned, Tucker represents the US.
If you
I've
wish to
clawed it.
leave this room with your testicles intact, that possibly could be arranged.
Still cupped, protected in his hand. Very interesting dynamic right there. Let's move on.
What comes next?
Whoa,
Maybe you trade one colonial power.
Whoa. That look at that look. That is a killer stare right there. Check this out.
Yep.
Got you.
Yep. Power look.
Maybe you trade one colonial power for another, much less sentimental and forgiving colonial power. I mean,
And
is the
Tucker taking a very
extra
submissive posture in
in
response.
danger?
You're not wrong, but I want to point out that if you had this man clawing at your face like that, I think you might take a bit of a step back, move some goalposts, and backpedal a little bit too.
Oh, yeah,
I would.
If you were, if you're sitting in his front room.
That's just self-preservation. There is nothing squirrely about that.
Completely dominated by the Chinese economy, in a way that's not good for their sovereignty. Do you worry about that?
Эти страшилки нам
Yes, he worries about that. I'm going to have my head up, and we didn't see his movement too much from the angle of just looking at Tucker, but we did see that his face and body didn't move. I don't know about the facial expression, but it didn't move. We go back to Putin. He's got his face up, looking up, and then laughs it off. Brows furrowed in. That is a worry. You don't
But it's a
laugh
real
off.
laugh.
You make very funny joke.
Well, but it looks ad-libbed. It looks like something you'd see at improv night. It looks like Jim Carrey would do it. It doesn't look real to me. What are you talking about? We are not threat from Chinese economy. Looks like he needs a brandy and a cigar. You know.
Yeah, we need to talk about China and Russia here at some point.
Yeah. That's gonna be a conversation.
Logical thought when you obviously can tell this man is not an idiot.
well, we have heard those boogeyman stories before. It is a boogeyman story.
You got one eyebrow up on that, the other one.
Quick take. Is China a major threat financially?
Yes, because they own so much of our debt. Militarily, not so much. Russia and
Right.
China are both on the brink of demographic collapse. And some down throughout the ages, what regimes often do when they were on the brink of demographic collapse and their regimes realize that they might be standing on tenuous ground, they lash out and launch into a war of conquest to give their frustrated young men something to do and to shore up some idea of national, national pride and unity, and to paper over the cracks in the dike that are threaten your position.
I have just set a fire in my room and I will be right back.
Down. It is a boogeyman story. And he's trying to shrug it off. Direct eye contact and the believe me look with a whole lot more stiffness than what we've seen with the US dollar. The boogeyman story is a legitimate boogeyman story. And again, this may be do not want to lose with his own cabinet, or he really is worried that China may pull some shenanigans.
We're neighbors with China. You cannot choose neighbors just as you cannot choose close relatives.
In the body end.
That's true. Fire's out, folks. We're good.
That's a relief.
Right? Dude, I I dropped something a few minutes ago and I thought I put it out. And then I was like dropped something else. I looked down and there's like literally a flame this tall next to my foot. And I was like, I've got to deal with that. That's
Crisis
actual
averted,
flames.
folks.
Crisis averted. All is safe. I didn't even have to pour nothing on it. I just picked it up, put it out. Pretty cool. I'm gonna double check though.
Instantly goes real loose about borders, sharing, can't choose them.
Свой уровень. Извините меня, даже если
You just asked me if another leader comes and changes something.
действие,
It is not about the leader. It is not about the personality of a particular person.
это очевидно.
I had a very
All right. Are we having buffering issues everywhere, or is it just my connection here with the rain?
I haven't had any issue that I've been able to discern.
I am watching it on my phone over here. Everything that's hooked up to a landline's working fine, but both your channel and mine's buffering on my end. But I can't get an answer out of anybody in the
It looks-
chat.
It looks fine on my other computer too. It has the whole time.
Okay. Like I said, I have a storm going on here. I was just making sure we hadn't been took down and I didn't notice.
Yeah, there's no problem that I can detect.
Fantastic. We shall move on. My bad.
good relationship with, say, Bush. I know that in the United States,
So right before it cuts, he goes to a visual and mentions Bush.
he was portrayed as some kind of a country boy who does not understand much. I assure you that this is not the case. I think he made a lot of mistakes
He comes back. He's giving very good eye contact. Got the believe me look. And he puts him in reference to the side of him
with regard to Russia, too.
and then keeps throwing it out. I don't know what words these are when it comes to the side and then throwing something at Tucker.
I told you about 2008 and the decision in Bucharest.
Is it just me, or does Tucker actually look a little? His eyebrows have gone a little NPC on us.
Yeah, I'm not. I think it's difficult to tell what he's thinking much of the time.
He looks a little angry to me.
Is it that, or is he just trying to look probing and quizzical? I can't quite figure it out.
Okay. We'll go 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Let's see how it plays out.
To open the NATO's doors for Ukraine and so on. That happened during his presidency. He actually exercised pressure on the Europeans. But in general, on a personal human level, I had a very good relationship with him. He was no worse than any other American or Russian or European politician. I assure you, he understood what he was doing as well as others.
I'm going to assume the assure word is with that open hand because that's basically what that means. Calm down, assurance, offering with the hand to the side, splayed out, not the palm up, like a backing away, but a tap down.
All right.
And
I wasn't gonna
also,
do this.
I think let's not forget the difficulty of doing a real time translated interview, because you have to listen to what's happening in your ear, and you also are trying to get a sense from the actual person of what it is they're saying, and that's
Well, that's what I was
difficult.
pointing out earlier, is I don't think Tucker is relying on the translation. I think he understands enough Russian to pull this off. Earlier, when there was a joke, both Tucker, when the thing happened, Tucker started laughing before the translator started talking. He understood the Russian that was said, not the translator telling, because it would not have come across as a joke the way the translator put it.
That's possible, I guess, and it would be a big advantage for him if he knew more Russian than he was letting on.
That's a common, I firmly believe he may not be fluent per se, but he has brushed up over the past few weeks or months or however long he's had this idea that he might be able to actually do this interview, that it was actually going to take place. If you were told in a year you might be able to have an interview with Vladimir Putin, what would you do tomorrow?
Brush up on my fucking Russian.
And what would you be doing right before the interview?
Drinking vodka,
And
playing chess,
brushing up on your fucking Russian
chasing moose and squirrel.
while drinking vodka, playing chess, and playing with them little nesting dolls.
Yes. God damn it. That's the one thing I forgot. The goddamn nesting dolls.
For the assurance,
I had such personal relation.
and then a sweeping motion with the assurance. Basically, he liked Bush. And this is the body language we get with Bush.
Relationship with Trump as well.
But with Trump, it's the
I
other
think
hand.
I saw into his
he throws
soul.
it aside, it doesn't even look. And go look at that again.
Hey, am I crazy, or did he just try to throw Trump away?
For the assurance,
I had such personal relation.
and then a sweeping motion with the assurance. Basically, he liked Bush. And this is the body language we get
Waxing
with
on,
Bush.
waxing off.
Trump as well.
Wax on, wax off.
But with Trump, it's the other hand.
And he threw it away. The second he's mentioned Trump, he held his hand up like he had grabbed an object, and then he threw it away with the disliked left hand. And if you watch him when he's talking, a lot of his meaningful talk with his hand comes from his right hand. His negligent stuff happens with his left hand.
Yeah, the right hand is definitely more animated than the left.
And he throws it to the side. It doesn't even look. And go look at that again.
He was no worse than any other American or Russian or European politician. I assure you, he understood what he was doing as well as others. I had such personal relationship with Trump as well.
All right. So
With Trump as well. Like, we don't want to talk about that no more. Let's move on away from that subject entirely. And I'm sure Tucker's perfectly happy to get the hell off that subject.
Yeah, it's
another
not
assurance,
really
sweeping
very
motion.
relevant at the
Doesn't
moment.
Look at that either. And Trump
Sorry, I lost my mouse there for a second. Sometimes it'll land in this little line right here and you can't see it.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
What were you saying? Well, that's what she said. Okay. Oh, good.
Trump is on the other side, thrown out, doesn't look at that one either. So the not looking at it is just him focusing on Tucker. I'm having two conversations about two different entities, literally. So you got Bush on one side. He's had them assurances swept out. He's got Trump on the other side, thrown over there. And that may be the mind putting it that way because Trump's time in office was very short and very contentious with any conversation he had with Putin. And the little bit he did have, obviously, at least according to Putin, went well.
So another thing I've noticed when he mentions Trump, there's that negligent, hey, let's get off that conversation real quick. But he also gets this weird sort of like quixotic look, like he's not sure what to make of the man.
Yeah, and it's impossible not to notice just glancing at the scoreboard that Obama first term, Putin invaded one of his neighbors. Obama second term, Putin invaded one of his neighbors. Biden first term, Putin invaded one of his neighbors. Trump, nothing.
Yeah, homie smoked a cigar and got a Hummer in the freaking golden bathtub that he owns.
It is not about the personality of the leader. It is about the elite's mindset.
And it's very interesting about the elite's mindset, different from Bush and Trump. We have no idea what the negative finger in the middle. We're going to assume that he's talking about the elite's mindset. So he has a negativity towards it, which he does not put on the side of Bush, nor on the side of Trump when he speaks on those. So it's not even in the same arena.
If the idea of domination
Hold on now. Is she implying that speaking about the administration is speaking differently than speaking about the presidents themselves? Or is this suggesting an elite mindset concept that is global rather than national?
What was it she said exactly?
Well, I'll back it up because it's hard to sub her up.
Mindset different from Bush on one side. He's had them assurances swept out. He's got Trump on the other side, thrown over there. And that may be the mind putting it that way because Trump's time in office was very short and very contentious with any conversation he had with Putin. And the little bit he did have, obviously, at least according to Putin, went well.
Yeah, I don't know about very short. It was 4 years, just like
It is
any
not
other
about
term.
the personality of the leader. It is about the elite's mindset.
Дело в настроениях.
And it's very interesting about the elite's mindset, different from Bush and Trump. We have no idea what the negative finger in the middle. We're going to assume that he's talking about the elite's mindset. So he has a negativity towards it, which
Was that a distinction not just between two presidents, but between two presidents and the people actually running the show?
I think it may have been, yes.
Oh Lord. Oh my.
Spicy.
on the side of Bush, nor on the side of Trump when he speaks on those. So it's not even in the same arena.
If the idea of domination at any cost, based also on forceful actions,
Then there we can't see him, but it looks like his hands are stood up pretty much like pillars as he's holding something that would be the idea.
dominates the American society, nothing will change. It will only get worse. But if, in the end, one comes to the awareness that the world has been changing due to the objective circumstances, and that one should be able to adapt to them in time, using the advantages that the U.S. still has today,
Oh, he talks a lot with his body. He's literally
Cradling the
grabbing
balls again.
himself.
I think I would call that more of a tickling motion. He's tickling the balls. So
Cradle the balls, work the shaft.
This is a man who is both a hand of granite and a velvet glove. He can be both soft and hard.
In that sense of it's the idea. This idea, as Elon likes to call mind virus for many different things. In Putin's mind, there's another.
Dude, that totally should have been our thumbnail. Did you see that?
I love the way she said mind virus.
Look at it. Look at that. Look at that.
Come at me, bitch.
You want some, bruh? You want it?
This
Some
is what
crazy
is
eye going
held
on.
so precariously in his fingertips. The wake up. All right, I'm done. We played with Putin long enough.
If you like it, please share and subscribe.
Please do. She does magnificent work.
Yeah, yeah. I love how she ends so abruptly sometimes. That's it. I'm done. Bye.
Yeah, she's just like, oh, screw it up, but that's enough. All right. So at this point, I want to end. Where's it at? There it is. Let's see what we got. End poll. We have 61% do not trust Tucker Carlson and 38% do.
Interesting.
Now,
How
I'll
many,
grant
how,
you-
how many votes?
21 votes. Not bad. Hey, Scotty, welcome in. So what I'm getting at is this. Everyone knows Tucker falls into the category, whether he likes it or not, of controlled opposition. By not towing the party line, he tries to separate himself from the herd by appearing more independent, but he is totally dependent on the technocracy that stands underneath the DNC. So whatever you may believe about his personal opinions may be perfectly honest. I have no idea, but the machine that drives him is utterly dependent on the rest of the technocracy.
And for the purposes of this interview he just did, his opinions didn't matter because the point of the exercise was to hear what Putin had to say. And I think he probably did as good of a job with that aspect as probably could have been done by anyone, and getting the guy to agree to the thing in the first place. But then, you know, you have to make it kind of a massage session up to a certain point. You don't want to come out adversarial and just close the guy off and turn it into a shouting match. So that's what most American reporters would have done in this day and age, because they just want the little viral soundbite. You know, this was much more of an effort, I think, to get inside the guy's head and maybe have him say some things that the audiences over here might not have considered, and which make the thing perhaps make sense in a different way, because it doesn't make sense with the version that we're told we have to believe, which is just that Putin is a bad, evil bad man who's a big meanie who hates freedom and democracy and just is a mustache-twirling movie villain who invades other countries because he likes to.
Still a lot of Russians in the Ukraine.
Yep. Hell of a lot.
Like, if they're not Russian, they're probably Hungarian. Let me know where I go wrong. Point it out when it happens. For some weird reason, that video, that link that you put in private chat, I'm going to mute up and go get it right, because for some reason it didn't go where I sent it. It's somewhere else.
Oh well. Yeah, I would have just sent the thumbnail, but I don't have it on the computer that I'm streaming on. So, 21st century problems, I guess. And as I don't know how many of you folks have seen the entirety of the interview and how many of you haven't, but just in listening to it and considering how hysterical everybody in the fake news performance art business got, as soon as the word came down that Tucker was going to go to Russia and interview Putin, that it was the most terrible thing that ever happened, and how can you platform this guy and you have to not listen to it, and oh my God, you might hear words coming out of this man's mouth. But was there anything in that interview that he said that Americans should be afraid of? I mean, he said a lot of wacky stuff, to be sure. Probably all the same wacky stuff that we've heard him say before, I would submit. The Russian history lesson that he opened up with was pretty unobjectionable right up until he got to the period before the Second World War. Then he started saying some pretty wacky off the wall stuff, like, Poland being a Nazi Germany collaborator. That's a little bit simplistic and reductive and self-serving from the Soviet perspective.
I really dug the history that he delivered at the beginning. Now, a lot of people were like, "Oh, he's filibustering through it." I've heard you're the second person I hear say that, but I more firmly, having watched it once and getting her take on it, I believe that he firmly believed he needed to educate this ignorant Westerner before we get too far into the weeds on this.
Yeah, because like we were talking about backstage before the show, he knows that he is speaking to a nation of people, namely us, that is just stultifyingly historically ignorant, and it's worse than it's ever been. It's always been kind of bad because we are a very young nation, and we don't have a whole hell of a lot of history to begin with compared to the nations in Europe. But it's gotten worse in recent generations with the last couple of groups of kids, because we don't even teach history anymore insofar as we used to. We only teach hyphenated history now. We teach hyphen this history and hyphen that history, and that's not really teaching history. That's just turning history into a vehicle to push some current day political point of view. So that doesn't even count.
It becomes a propaganda machine. In fact, the tendency of really, really particular type of weirdos we're not allowed to really discuss on YouTube to be teachers is disparaging. It is so ridiculous that if you go to any given school in America and go roust out a couple of people from their classrooms, you will discover the unspeakable thing happening in virtually every campus in America. And I can't help but think that is permitted by the administrations of these different school districts.
There arguably has never been any group of people more overrepresented in any industry.
Agreed. And it's a really strange sort of situation to end up in, where when you're talking to your child, they come home and they're like, well, Mick so-and-so says such and such. And you're like, no, this is actually how it is. Well, you're just transphobic. I didn't know they were trans. So No. And I don't care. So further, no. And
Yeah, and it's
child.
just straight to the ad hominem.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm having some connectivity issues over here. I just had some things glitch across here. So
Uh-oh.
no, I was just wondering because I have yet to catch up on the freaking phone over here. It is just convinced there's no signal in this house. I don't get it. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I haven't had anything look wrong on either of my computers here, for whatever that's worth.
good deal, bud. I'm proud of you. Everything's been running smoothly as far as backstage. I haven't had any issues there. The only problem I had, there's no pop out chat for Twitter, and I launched it in the wrong. I can't access my Twitter in my other browser because I haven't hooked it up over there yet. So I don't know how to put it on screen without putting another image of us on screen in an entire window, and I don't want to do that. I can't.
Then we might break the universe.
Yeah, it'd be like Streamception, and there'd be just too much cap on screen at the same time. No cap. Yeah, no, I got to give you that much. It was better than an interview with Biden. He didn't even nod off once.
Yep.
I had someone bring a concept to me a while back that actually left me sort of stunned, and you can see the stunned moment in the live stream on my channel if you're interested. The man left me speechless. This is a nuked channel that does not exist anymore. We were sitting there talking, and he come to me and was like, okay, what is the biggest problem in American public schools today? And, we went through a whole bunch of different, propagandizing the different aspects of literature, removing certain aspects of literature, making other aspects appear more than it actually is. There's a whole bunch of stuff. The word praxis covers most of it. But he goes, no, I mean, what's at the root of all of it? And I sat there going, I don't know what you mean. He said, the Department of Education. If we abolish the Department of Education, all of this suddenly becomes a merit-based situation. No one has tenure. No one gets to browbeat anyone else because every single state has their own version of the DOE, and boom.
There is absolutely no fact-based metric you can point to and say that the existence of the Federal Department of Education has been a good thing for education. Because
not for education.
The scholastic achievement of American children has done absolutely nothing but spiral downward and downward and downward ever since the day in 1979 when that department was created.
And by the elimination of the Department of Education, you would leave every single local school board, state school board, and all of these would have free reign to do whatever they feel like they need to do in their individual states.
But that's the great thing about government expansion. When you're one of the people who likes government expansion, once you create a new agency or a new department, you know how hard it is to ever get rid of that damn thing.
Take a literal act of Congress in this situation. Yep. But I think it would be a good thing for the country overall, but it would be a disaster for the next 48 months.
How much would it benefit us to get rid of the stupid, god-awful 17th Amendment? But how much chance is there of it ever happening? Zero.
Dude, these motherfuckers won't agree that the sky is blue. Because they'll be like, but clouds. And one of them will look up and say, I can't see the sky. And another one would say that I can't speak intelligently on that because I'm not a fucking astronaut.
Thank you, Ketanji Brown Jackson.
I'm not a pilot. I can't talk about the sky. What the hell is going on here? I have lost the freaking thread back there like a couple of years ago. I kind of thought things were headed in a sort of a direction. And then all of a sudden, the past couple of years, the direction has been lost. They've lost the plot. The MacGuffin is gone. We no longer have a script.
I'm not a rancher, so I can't tell you if that's bullshit.
Right? Right? Sorry, I'm not a NASCAR driver. I don't know if that's a left turn. I don't get it, dude. Like, Where does this thought process come from? At what point in time can I not have an opinion on a dog's afternoon because I'm not a bitch? I don't understand it.
I don't understand how all the people who were the sensitive anti-war liberal lefties 20 years ago, they now call you a traitor to the Republic if you're not willing enough to bathe in the blood of dead Russians. I don't know how that happens.
Or if you forget to put your mandatory face diaper on in the wrong time period. Actually, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I remember the name of the main character, Lazarus Long. He had all kinds of things, but Lazarus Long once said, whenever in a foreign area surrounded by foreigners, make sure to rub the blue mud in your navel in the counterclockwise direction that all of the natives are using. Do not do it in clockwise direction because this may offend the gods and you may lose your head.
Yep.
Robert Heinlein.
Same reason why you don't ever show somebody the bottom of your shoe when you're in an Arab country.
And that's serious, dude. Like,
Oh, I know.
I mean, it's hard to analogize what it would be like in English because we're so disrespectful just about on premise. I mean, there are guys that I would die for, that I would fight tooth and nail for, but the very second I see them in public, I'm like, what are you doing, you little wuss? Why are you in here with all these girly things?
Yeah. What are you doing in the gender-neutral toy aisle?
I see you over there. You're a little light in the hills, ain't you? You know, the funny part is he is gay, so you know,
Huh.
it's so funny because it's true. And you know, we hug and kiss and we all make up and it's all fun. But
So do we have a few minutes for the Meyerling incident or what?
wait a second, Meyerlings. Wait, I think I'm having a Fallout 4 flashback. Those are Meyer alerts. Go ahead, Meyerling. What is a Meyerling incident?
Well, we spoke briefly last week about the start of the First World War, as we sometimes do. And I mean, most people, anybody erudite enough to be watching this show, knows that the animating cause that made the First World War break out was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the heir presumptive to the Habsburg throne in Austria. But nobody ever talks about, or much cares, how Franz Ferdinand got to be the heir presumptive to the Habsburg throne, because he wasn't supposed to be. He wasn't the son of the current emperor, the old venerable Franz Joseph I, who has been reigning for by 1914. He's been on the throne since dinosaurs roamed the earth, all the way back in 1848. He only had one son, 2 daughters first, then he has a son, Crown Prince Rudolph. He's supposed to be the guy who assumes the title of emperor. But he never does. You know, Crown Prince Rudolph, he's kind of a strange guy. He doesn't have much interest in being crown prince or king. He likes looking at birds. He likes banging hot young chicks, and he likes getting drunk, and that's just about it.
Damn.
And then one day in 1889, he and his 17-year-old mistress, Baroness Mary von Wetzera, are found dead in a hunting lodge on the Meyerling estate. And then shit. And this is a fun historical mystery in that, you know, it was pretty much unsolved for well over 100 years, and then just in 2015, not even a decade ago, they found a bunch of, amazingly, all the letters turned up that explained the whole thing, and as it often does, Occam's razor wound up being correct, and the simplest, most self-evident explanation wound up being the true one, which was that Rudolph pretty much had decided some time ago that he wanted to off himself, and he wanted a hot young girl to commit suicide with him. And he actually had his suicide partner picked out, wrote her a letter all about it. One of the letters that turned up in 2015, she decided, nah, not really into that very much. And so then he found this second girl, Mary von Wetzera, and she decided, you know what, that sounds kind of romantic, you know, being a suicide pact with the heir to the imperial throne. Sounds like a pretty good claim to fame. I'm in. Let's do it. And then, but until those letters turned up in 2015, that there were many of years and lots of opportunities for people to invent various fanciful, increasingly esoteric conspiracy theories about what really happened. But, you know,
that's a common feature of a good conspiracy theory when it comes down to it. And I mean this in the CIA definition of the term, not in, you know, the actual, you know, just because there's a theory that involves more than 3 people that happens to be a conspiracy doesn't make it a CIA op. I'm just saying.
And
I mean this in the CIA op term.
And as far as the Habsburg family went, they had a pretty clear set of priorities when, you know, as soon as their son and his young mistress have been found dead in this hunting lodge, we have to get her the fuck into the ground and make sure everybody forgets all about her. And more importantly, we have to get the church to sign off on our son being buried in the imperial crypt, because if he's a murderer and killed himself, then he's in a state of mortal sin and he can't be buried with the rest of the family. So they have to throw a little bit of money around and get what they need from your medical examiner and your church authorities and whatnot. But they clapped such a tight lid on the thing so quickly that it really precluded detailed investigations being able to be undertaken for quite a number of years, and nothing spawns fanciful conspiracy theories better than that.
A vacuum of information. I have something for the thing on.
We interrupt this program for an important news announcement.
All right, read the score.
Briscoe 10, Chief 6.
All right, that's good enough.
I mean, white bastard settler colonizers 10, indigenous noble savages 6. Here's your sports ball update.
Of non-discriminate origin. Random object of affection update.
Also, I'm just here to say Washington Redskins. Oh, speaking of that, have you heard? And God, I've few times have I ever been so delighted to see a bit of news that there is actually a Native American-led effort underway now to get the Washington Redskins to change their name back.
That's the second time this has happened, bro. This isn't the first time.
How awesome is that?
Remember, the Atlanta Braves went through a period of time where they were desperately trying to change their franchise, but we actually have a fairly decent sized contingent of Native Americans in Georgia, and they went, the hell are you talking about? That's crazy. What are you doing? We love the you can't do that. And so it didn't happen. So we still have the Atlanta Braves instead of the Atlanta Caucasians.
Yeah, and like North Dakota State, the NCAA forced them to change their names from the Fighting Sioux, even though the name has the complete full backing and endorsement of the tribe. And they've been working directly with the school for decades. The NCAA won't accept it. And just as a basic 30,000-foot question, I fail to see how the interests of Native Americans are advanced by eradicating them from the culture entirely.
I don't get it. It is the most baffling aspect of this entire concept. I mean, it would almost appear as if these people would like to push us directly into a segregated society.
It almost does look that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. Kind of conservative is retroactive.
It's almost like the people who call themselves anti-racist are running around pushing a bunch of neo-segregationist policies.
Well said. I kind of want to end the show on that note, damn it. You should have saved that for the end. Why did you save that for the end?
Oh, but we're not quite done with the the tragedy of the Habsburg family, though.
Yeah, true, but I'm
'Cause
saying that was well
you got
put.
so you've got the Meyerling incident, the big murder suicide in 1889, which results in the emperor's grandnephew being the heir to the throne instead of his son. But then in there's an event in between those two things. In 1898, the Crown Prince Rudolph's mom and Emperor Franz Joseph's wife, Empress Elizabeth, she gets assassinated in Geneva by an anarchist who is wielding a sharpened it's a file, the file that you put the eye in a needle with. He's filed that thing down. He goes up, he stabs her in the heart with it, but the thing is so skinny that neither she nor her companion realizes that she's been stabbed in the heart. And since this is 1898 and she's wearing a really tight-ass corset that she's got cinched up as tight as it'll go, the wound doesn't even bleed until they go to get on the boat that they were scheduled to go on, and the Empress starts not feeling so well. Like, I feel like I've been stabbed in the heart or something. So they lay her down, they undo her corset, and all of a sudden she starts gushing blood because she's got a big fucking hole in her heart. Only then is it ascertained that she's actually been stabbed and this is an assassination attempt, and they turn the boat around and try and rush her to the hospital, but it's too late and she dies.
It's 18 freaking hundreds, and getting to the hospital wouldn't have meant shit because she was stabbed in the heart.
Yeah,
but it
is as assassinations go, it is quite a fascinating one. And it also was an anarchist who wound up offing Franz Ferdinand just 16 years later and precipitating the First World War. So yeah, the anarchists really did a number on that family, didn't they?
Yeah, no, this is one of my favorite tidbits of history. The individual who assassinated Franz, Archduke Ferdinand, he attempted to assassinate him and went to where he was supposed to be, and he didn't show up. And so he got up, left, and went to a coffee shop to get some bread and coffee. And the reason that Ferdinand hadn't showed up is because there was a big crowd in the area he was planning on going through. And so he had gone a back way. And so the guy who was planning on assassinating gave up, and Ferdinand both gave up on the system, only to end up in the same place. And and the dude's like standing there with his bread and his cup of coffee in front of Starbucks. He goes, well, shit.
Yeah. Well, shit, if he's going to give me a second chance, I might as well take it.
Right? And there were a couple of other people involved in that plot too, but they were all on the planned route doing what they were supposed to be doing. And this guy was like, man, I ain't gonna see shit over here. It's like a Trump rally.
Yeah, and that was the thanks that Franz Ferdinand got for having the misfortune of being the next guy in line in the succession after Crown Prince Rudolph and his little girlfriend offed themselves. But you know what else? I think there's another kind of interesting little connection here potentially, because that story about the Meyerling incident, the star-crossed lovers killing themselves together, for a lot of German and Austrian girls who were born in the first couple decades of the 20th century, they thought that was a pretty cool, pretty romantic story. So people like Eva Braun, in other words. And where else have we heard about a double suicide that vaguely looks like that one?
Yeah, no, it's actually not horrendously uncommon in like Slavic tales.
Yeah, so for Eva Braun, the way that she wound up ending along with her new husband in the Führer bunker on 30 April 1945, she might have thought that sounded pretty romantic, and sort of echoed the example of Crown Prince Rudolph and Little Mary. Just something to think about.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like we were saying earlier, the further west you come through Europe, from like the western reaches of Russia into the western reaches of Europe, your culture changes drastically. It goes largely from an innuendo based, we all have a private joke culture, to a we're all globalists and no one has privacy culture. It's a really weird kind of thing.
Yeah, and never the twain shall meet.
Absolutely amazing. Hey, dude, you know what you're supposed to do?
What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to talk us out? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius. It's been a real pleasure having you, as it always is. We are here every Sunday night doing this thing we do, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Be sure and join us next week. Do bring a friend. The score looks to be white bastard colonizer settlers. Oh, they're losing now to the indigenous noble savages, 13-10. 2:23 remaining in the third quarter. I'm still not going to watch. You're probably not either. Anyway, have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.